Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Amita Rari, and coming up in today's newscast, the murdered victims in yesterday's terror attack laid to rest and investigations open. Meantime, the incoming Israeli coalition members continue their difficult negotiations. And a special theatrical screening announced for a very unique series. Israel still in mourning following the murderous rampage of a Palestinian terrorist in Ariel Tuesday morning. 3 Israelis killed and now named, and 3 more Israelis still hospitalized with grave injuries. ILTV's Aaron Porras reports.
59-year-old Moti Ashkenazi from Yavne, a father of 3 and grandfather of 2. 36-year-old Michael Ladigan from Bat Yam, a father of 2 who moved to Israel from Ukraine. And 50-year-old Tamir Avichai from Kiryat Netafim, husband and father of 6. These are the 3 Israelis murdered Tuesday morning in the 20-minute Palestinian terrorist killing spree that left another 3 gravely injured just outside the Ariel Industrial Park in Judea and Samaria, an area where both Israelis and Palestinians work together. Hundreds of Israelis attending the funerals Tuesday evening following the attack, the victims described as family men full of love. May their memory be a blessing. Meantime, the IDF mapping the home of the terrorist, an 18-year-old Fatah member from Khares, for demolition. The terrorist, praised in the Palestinian Authority and in Gaza as a hero, held a permit to work at Intel in the Ariel Park, and he used the permit to enter the area where he committed his heinous assault on civilians. Now that the dust has settled, more accurate reports describing the timeline of the attack. The terrorist arriving at the entrance to the Ariel Industrial Park around 9:30 in the morning, and he stabbed the guard, wounding him. Another security guard then fired into the air rather than directly at the terrorist, for which an investigation has been opened. The terrorist then escaped into the nearby gas station and stabbed 3 more people, 2 of whom were killed. After this, he stole a car and proceeded to crash into other cars on the nearby highway and run someone over, killing him. Then he got out of the car, stabbed another person, stole a second car, and drove against traffic to escape the IDF, who by now were closing in. Finally, after crashing the second car, the terrorist exited the vehicle and attempted to flee, where soldiers and armed civilians shot him dead. In its entirety, the rampage lasting about 20 minutes.
And joining us now with more on the latest terror wave is Charles Bibelezer, news editor at JNS. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Now, we're seeing reports now that the security guard at Ariel who failed to shoot the terrorist and then failed to properly report the attack may be brought up on charges. Well, he followed the rules. I mean, what are your opinions on the matter?
First and foremost, I'd say that if anyone's ever been either in a terror attack or around a terror attack while it's happening, the circumstances are quick coming. Obviously, these people are trained to address them, but I think it's a little bit too early to judge anyone until all of the facts and the probe is complete. It's possible that he could be brought up on charges, but it's dependent on what the rules of engagement are with Intel. Yes, he did fire into the air, which is probably standard practice. The IDF also does so. So there's still information that needs to be recovered before anyone really jumps to conclusions.
So on that, we've heard analysis that loosening the rules of engagement would have either or no effect or negative effect on preventing terror, as it would either escalate or actually do nothing, especially as terrorists are typically prepared for that before they commit their crimes. What do you think about that?
Well, let's not forget that a lot of these terrorists are willing to become martyrs to begin with. So a lot of the times death doesn't particularly act as a deterrent as it would a rational actor. Moreover, this has become, generally speaking, almost a daily occurrence in Judea and Samaria over the past year in particular, and really ongoing since the Second Intifada. The IDF's been engaged in, obviously, Operation Breaking the Wave since March, which was launched to crack down on terrorist infrastructure in the West Bank. There have been thousands of arrests. There have been almost near nightly overnight raids. So the IDF is taking this very seriously, and it's pretty hard to imagine that anything less than an Operation Defensive Shield circa 2003 really going into these cities in the West Bank and really rooting out the terrorist infrastructure, similar to what has been done in Jenin, but to a lesser degree and on a much larger scale, can do much at this stage in order to really curb the violence. So it'll definitely be a challenge for whatever incoming government. Looks like Netanyahu, and right religious bloc, which is really came to power on a wave of public anger about the ongoing terrorism, Palestinian terrorism. So we're going to have to wait and see what really they can do.
Do you really think it will make a difference? I mean, or will their hands be tied this time as well?
I really, at this point, I think that anything, because the IDF has really gone in. There have been clashes near every single night. Thousands of people have been arrested. There's been deaths on both sides. This is beginning, months ago with the wave of terror that struck Israel. Unless they really go into the cities, I don't want to say reoccupy Palestinian cities, but anything less than that and really sustained intensive military operations to get to the heart of the issue, not necessarily unlike what they did with the Lions Den, for example, which had emerged recently over the course of the last couple of months, but which the IDF really took a hard line against and pretty much destroyed for the time being, although there will probably be copycat organizations that pop up. Unless you control things on the ground directly in the cities, it's almost impossible to get people to stop coordinating these attacks.
This is really a $1 million question, but most of the recent terrorists are operating solo. I mean, Israel prides itself on being a technological powerhouse. Isn't there any way to track this?
It's very difficult. But, a lot of people describe these individuals as lone wolves, for example. But I think it's important to remember that you have a society, and in particular the Palestinian Authority, which cultivates these attacks. You have, Mahmoud Abbas's Fatah faction, which is the ruling faction in the US-funded and European-funded Palestinian Authority, not only praising these attacks and these attacks being committed by members of these groups, but thereafter paying, lifelong stipends, which are, double, 3 times the average wage in Judea and Samaria. I think that's incentive enough for a lot of people to commit terrorist attacks without necessarily being directly affiliated with one particular terrorist group or another. This is being cultivated from the ground up. It has been for a long time. Let's not forget the PLO was pretty much the modern-day inventor of modern-day terrorism, and it happens to be a product of Palestinian society.
Yes, indeed. Charles, praying for more peaceful times. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Georgian security forces reporting that they identified a group of Georgians with dual Iranian and Pakistani citizenship who planned to kill an Israeli citizen. The Pakistani was reportedly sent to the country to assassinate the Israeli, while the Iranians provided him with weapons. Here are the details. Georgia's State Security Service said on Tuesday that it had foiled an attempt by a criminal gang to murder an Israeli citizen in the south of the Caucasian country.
სახელმწიფო უსაფრთხოების სამსახურის კონდაზვერის დეპარტამენტის მიერ გამოვლენილ და აკვეთილ იქნა დანაშაულებრივი ჯგუფის მიერ საქართველოში დაგეგმილი ისრაელის მოქალაქის კვლელობის მცდელობა. გატარებული ოპერატიულ სამძებრო ღონისძიებების და საგამოძიებო მოქმედებების შედეგად დაკავებული არიან პაკისტანისა და ირან-საქართველოს ორმაგი მოქალაქეობის მქონე პირები. იდენტიფიცირებული არიან უცხოეთში მყოფი ორგანიზატორები, მათ შორის დადგენილი არიან კვლელობის სავარაუდო შემკვეთი ირანის მოქალაქე და სხვა მონაწილე პირები, რომელთა მიმართ მიმდინარეობს კომპლექსური ოპერატიულ სამძებრო ღონისძიებები. გამოძიებით დადგენილია, რომ დანაშაულებრივი ჯგუფის მიერ საქართველოში გამოიგზავნა ამ ჯგუფში ჩართული პაკისტანის მოქალაქე, რომელსაც დავალებული ჰქონდა საქართველოში ისრაელის მოქალაქის კვლელობა.
Georgian security personnel reportedly prevented the Quds Force, an arm of Iran's Revolutionary Guards, from killing Itzhak Moshe, a renowned Israeli-Georgian resident of the country's capital, Tbilisi. According to security officials in Israel, Iranian forces have previously attempted to kill Moshe. Moshe, 62, founded Israeli House, an organization that aims to strengthen Israel's reputation in Eastern Europe, and has formerly served as a senior Jewish agency representative in Russia. The attempt comes in the wake of other recent Iranian attempts to attack Israelis in the region, as an attempt to kill Israeli businessmen in Cyprus was made in October of last year, and an attack on Israelis in Istanbul was foiled by Israel and Turkey in June. The case is now being investigated. Georgia is a popular travel location for Israelis, especially the resort town of Batumi and the capital Tbilisi. In the meantime, no travel warnings to Georgia are planned, according to National Security Council officials. Efforts of former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to form a coalition agreement with his partners are bogged down. Netanyahu was given the mandate from President Herzog on Sunday, and there's still plenty of time to get the job done. But right now, political speculation is reaching a fevered pitch. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovich.
It could have been what is referred to in basketball jargon as a slam dunk. But 2 weeks after winning election with a solid 64-seat coalition, Likud leader Benjamin Netanyahu is no closer to a coalition agreement with his partners. Few, if any, political pundits in Israel believe that Netanyahu will fail to fulfill his mandate given to him by President Isaac Herzog on Sunday. He has 26 days and a possible 14-day extension to do so. Yet, at this moment at least, the issues remain intractable, and political spins are aplenty. In today's reporting, the contacts between Likud, Yesh Atid, and the National Unity Party are underway. In that unlikely scenario, outgoing Prime Minister Lapid and Defense Minister Gantz would enter a broad Likud-led coalition. Coalition negotiations are said to be held up due to disputes between Bibi and religious Zionism head Bezalel Smotrich. The two leaders finally met after a full week. The issue is what government ministry Smotrich will receive. Smotrich is insisting on defense or possibly the finance ministry, while Netanyahu prefers to keep those key posts within his Likud party. Smotrich is now demanding expedited coalition talks to establish a right-wing religious government as soon as possible, insisting that the voters were promised greater security, and that is what must be delivered. The National Religious Party and Likud both emphasized the issue of security in their election campaigns, and now the people are expecting that since they're heading into power, it'll be their responsibility to deliver. A key figure in the coalition building is Shas leader Aryeh Deri. The question of which cabinet post and whether he can even serve in the cabinet is yet to be decided. Under the law, the twice convicted political leader may not be eligible. The incoming coalition is expected to enact a lightning legislative blitz to change the law even before the new government is sworn in. Current coalition bickering aside, the Netanyahu, Smotrich, and Deri-led government will be formed. It's only a matter of time.
Now, with me to discuss all the latest cabinet rumors and updates is Gil Hoffman, Executive Director of Honest Reporting and former JPOST political analyst. Hi, Gil. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure being with you, Amit.
Gil, so the 25th Knesset was sworn in yesterday, but the battles over the positions in the right-wing bloc continue. What should we expect in the coming days?
Netanyahu desperately wanted to already swear in his government the day that the Knesset was sworn in. He thought that if he put the right kind of pressure on his coalition partners, they would take one for the team, they would take into account that there were terror attacks, and they would definitely want to remove Yair Lapid from the prime minister's office and replace him with Netanyahu. It didn't work out that way. The various coalition partners all want to get the best portfolios possible. Bezalel Smotrich in particular wants to be defense minister, even though America doesn't want him in that position, and the Americans know how to pressure Netanyahu. Aryeh Deri wants to be finance minister. And so today, the news is that no negotiations are happening. All the meetings were canceled in order to allow both sides to prove a point.
Is there any truth, do you think, of Lapid and Bibi talking about working together in the coalition? Because Lapid has repeatedly staked his political career in the last few years on working against Netanyahu at all levels.
Lapid won't be joining this government. Gantz won't be joining this government. Netanyahu will be forming a coalition with his right-wing allies, and the world needs to be getting used to it. The most left-wing member of Knesset in this coalition will be Netanyahu himself.
So is it all just rumors, do you think?
No, it's not rumors, it's tactics. You know, every side wants to pretend that they have another option when they don't. They really are stuck together. This is the only government that's possible to be formed. This is what the people of Israel voted for, whether the people who didn't vote for it like it or not. So they're artificially playing against each other, but no, the Likud put out first thing in the morning that article that suggested that it was a possibility was wrong, and this time you can believe them.
Well, we also know that the White House is particularly concerned over certain lawmakers' influence in the coalition. Might Washington's worries be influencing the negotiation at all?
Absolutely. Welcome to Israel 2022. The opposition leader, with all due respect, is not Yair Lapid. The opposition leader in Israel today is Joe Biden. And Joe Biden is the one who can really put pressure on Netanyahu to not go so far to the right, or at least be used by Netanyahu, who doesn't want to go so far to the right, as an excuse. It's already started. It's going to happen nonstop during this government. There'll be international pressure, whether real or made up, and that's what will allow Netanyahu to not have to take steps that theoretically are part of his own ideological point of view.
Now, with Trump announcing his candidacy for presidency in 2024, how do you see that influencing in the near future?
That was kind of expected, right? Netanyahu was definitely affected by Trump not succeeding in the primary race a few days ago. If he would have seen Trump bolstered and Biden becoming more of a lame duck, then that's something that Netanyahu could have used to get away with appointing Bezalel Smotrich as defense minister, even if Biden doesn't like it. And so now that he doesn't have that, okay, so Trump announced. No one knows if he'd be able to come back to power. Everybody's still talking about Ron DeSantis in Florida, and he's not Trump.
Gil Hoffman, thank you so much for joining us. Now, let's hope for a new set government really soon.
Looking forward. Thanks so much.
Speaking of the parliament, as lawmakers in the 25th Knesset swearing in, outgoing Prime Minister Yair Lapid reaffirming Israel's commitment to its security personnel and rejecting the United States Department of Justice decision to open an FBI probe into the killing of Palestinian-American journalist Shireen Abu Akleh. And this, especially as Israel conducted a thorough investigation earlier this year, concluding that the IDF likely shot Abu Akleh, but by mistake during a tense exchange with Palestinian militants in Jenin. And Washington, whom was included in the investigation previously, reached the same conclusion over the summer. This new probe only coming following pressure from Abu Akleh's family and Democratic lawmakers. Lapid then telling of how he informed U.S. officials that Jerusalem will in no way cooperate with such an investigation, which is largely politically motivated. Prime Minister Yair Lapid saying that IDF soldiers will not be interrogated by the FBI or any other foreign body or country, no matter how friendly, and that Israel will not abandon its soldiers, foreign investigators, and Israel's strong protest has been conveyed to the Americans at the appropriate levels. Similarly, at a military ceremony earlier in the day, Lapid adding that he would not allow an IDF soldier that was protecting himself from terrorists to be prosecuted just to receive an applause from abroad. Former U.S. President Donald Trump has officially thrown his hat in the ring as a candidate for the presidency in 2024. The announcement was welcomed by some, but not most of the Republican leadership. In Israel, the candidate has many supporters who would cheer his return to the White House. ILTV's Steve Leibovich reports.
It was hyped and promised, and now it's official.
In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
Israel and diaspora Jewry need no reminder about Trump's record. He was president less than 2 years ago and did not disappear from the media since leaving office. Most American Jews voted for President Biden in the 2020 election. That fact has not escaped Trump, who spoke this week to the Zionist Organization of America.
All of the horrible things that have taken place with Biden and
Barack Hussein Obama. And then they get 75% of the vote. What the hell is going on here, Martin? But we're going to get it changed. I mean, they have to. They really have to. They need more support.
Trump has much Republican Jewish support and also many supporters in Israel. He is remembered as the U.S. president who moved the embassy to Jerusalem, pulled out of the Iran deal, cut assistance to the Palestinians, recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan, and helped forge the Abraham Accords. The former president will likely face Republican challengers for the nomination. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis tops the list. Jewish Republicans point out that the list of very pro-Israel presidential possibilities includes former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, and former Vice President Mike Pence.
As the World Cup is set to kick off next week and 1.5 million fans are expected to arrive in Qatar, amongst them thousands of Israelis, there are still quite a few issues along the way. Meanwhile, no Israeli airline agreed to be the first ever to fly directly from Israel to Qatar, with only 4 days left until the World Cup begins in a Gulf state. If nothing changes, Cypriot TAS Airways will be operating flights separately from the Foreign Ministry's arrangements that will fly from Tel Aviv to Larnaca for a diplomatic layover, meaning that the plane will wait a short time on the ground before continuing to Qatar. Moreover, security experts are sending a warning about the mandatory apps issued by the Qatari government. Fans who will arrive to Qatar for the World Cup will have to download 2 apps, one to track COVID-19 and another one to enter the games, as well as to gain free access to Qatar's public transportation. For ticket holders, security experts are already warning that this is expected to be a data security and a privacy nightmare. And now, an international team of leading Israeli universities has made a groundbreaking discovery, finding the oldest evidence of controlled use of fire to cook food. The remarkable scientific discovery provided a close analysis of the remains of a carp-like fish found at the Gesher Bnot Yaakov archaeological site in Israel, and shows that the fish were cooked roughly 780,000 years ago. Until now, the earliest evidence of cooking dates to approximately 170,000 years ago. The question of when early man began using fire to cook food has been the subject of much scientific discussion for over a century. And these new findings, published in Nature, Ecology and Evolution, shed new light on the matter. The research was a collaboration between the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, Tel Aviv University, and Bar Ilan University, in collaboration with the Steinhardt Museum of Natural History, Oranim Academic College, the Israel Oceanographic and Limnological Research Institution, the Natural History Museum in London, and the Johannesburg Gothenburg University in Mainz. And to our final story for tonight, Jesus getting the Hollywood treatment once again, but in a very different way. The New Testament story coming to life in an episodic, season-based fashion, and the first few episodes, season 3, now set to hit the big screen at a very special event this Thursday. ILTV's Aaron Porras with the details.
Set in 1st century Israel, historical drama series The Chosen is now set to release its 3rd season this Friday, November 18. But for a sneak peek at the first few episodes of the 3rd season in this unique series, the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. hosting a special theatrical screening event on Thursday the 17th. Filmed across Texas and Utah, the series created, directed, and co-written by American filmmaker Dallas Jenkins, and it's the first ever multi-season series surrounding the life and teachings of Jesus of Nazareth, starring Jonathan Rumi in the titular role. But in contrast to other series and films, The Chosen focusing on portraying Jesus' life and teachings in a more personal and intimate way through the eyes of those who met him. To that end, Season 3 picking up after the famous Sermon on the Mount, with the 12 disciples preparing to take on new roles while challenged with their own many battles. Now finally, the Bible Museum's event is since sold out, but to watch the series, check it out for free through the Chosen app, or your choice of streaming platforms, including VidAngel, Amazon Prime, Trinity Broadcasting, and UpTV.
Now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Partly cloudy skies and rain forecasted this evening, with lows tonight averaging around 13 degrees Celsius or 55 Fahrenheit. And then tomorrow we can expect warmer top temperatures ranging from low to mid-20s, along with more partly cloudy skies and rainy weather across the region. Now that's all for today's news. For more updates from Israel on all your devices, check out our ILTV channels on YouTube, Facebook, and Telegram, and subscribe to our ILTV's newsletter. I'm Amit Harari. Be well, and thank you so much for watching.